Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take the sources you share with us, dig into them, and pull out the key insights so you get the core ideas quickly.
Helping you get informed faster.
Exactly. Today we're looking at some excerpts you sent from Natsume Soseki's I Am a Cat. We're basically stepping into early 20th century Japan, but seeing it all through, well, a cat's eyes.
A very observant cat, mind you.
Yeah.
And nameless, which is interesting in itself.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack what this cat sees, how he comments on people, society, art, all based on these excerpts. Should be some surprising bits and definitely some humor.
Definitely humorous.
Yeah.
And insightful.
And don't worry about needing any specific background here. We'll make it clear and engaging and respect your time.
Yeah.
Let's dive in.
Okay, so first off, the cat's arrival. It's not exactly a warm welcome.
No. What happened?
He doesn't even know where he was born. Starts off nameless. Then his first real encounter is with this student who apparently eats cats, or at least boils them. Horrifying.
Yikes. Okay, so danger right off the bat.
Yeah, pure survival mode. He gets picked up, carried around, feels dizzy, and then just dumped, abandoned.
Wow. Rough start.
And that's how he stumbles, quite literally, into the house of this teacher. The teacher seems kind of quiet. Close-tongued is the phrase used.
So from immediate danger to indifference, maybe.
Seems like it. It really sets him up as this outsider, this observer, looking in on the human world. Perfect position for commentary, really.
Okay, let's dig into that. This vulnerable cat escapes being, well, potentially dinner.
Right.
Only to end up with this teacher who sounds kind of aloof. But the cat quickly sees behind the professional facade, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. The public probably sees a respectable scholar, but the cat sees him napping. A lot, even drooling on his books.
Huh, not exactly the image of intense scholarship.
Not at all. Then the cat has this wonderfully cynical thought, like, if this is what being a teacher is, maybe I could do it.
It immediately punctures that human pretension, doesn't it? CC is showing the gap between the role and the reality.
That's it, exactly. It's a theme right from the start. This gap between how people present themselves and how they actually are in private. The cat's gaze is just so unfiltered.
And this teacher, he's not just napping, he's also a serial dabbler in the arts, it sounds like.
Oh, big time. He tries his hand at everything. Haiku, then the more modern Shintashi poetry, even tries writing in English, though apparently not very well.
And it doesn't stop there.
Nope. Archery. Yutai singing loudly, it seems. So loudly he gets this nickname, Professor Privy, because people think he's singing in the outhouse.
Professor Privy, oh dear.
And then there's the fiddle, too. Just jumps from one thing to the next.
What's the takeaway here? Is it just restlessness or something more?
I think Soseki's showing us that very human trait, wanting to seem accomplished in many fields, seeking that validation, but maybe lacking the focus or, frankly, the talent to excel in any of them.
Spreading himself thin.
Exactly. It's this kind of scattered energy. And the cat, who is just quietly observing, sees it all.
Then things get even more specific with the painting attempt.
Ah, yes. The Andrea del Sarto incident. An esthetician friend, Mr. Mighty, suggests he try painting in that style. And who's the model?
Our narrator, the cat.
Right. But the painting is just terrible.
Yeah.
According to the cat, anyway. Wrong fur color, no eyes. It's brutal.
So artistic failure combined with, what, not even really looking at the subject.
Precisely. It shows the teacher's vanity. He's so caught up in the idea of being an artist, imitating a master, that he doesn't engage with the reality right in front of him.
And then he blames the cat for moving.
Calls him a blockhead. It's that human entitlement again. Lack of empathy. He's using the cat, but has no real regard for him as a living being in that moment.
Just pure self-absorption, which seems to carry over into his social life, too, complaining about his work.
Constantly, yes. Whining to his friends, looking for sympathy or maybe praise, but seemingly unwilling to put in the actual effort.
Okay, so that sets up a really interesting contrast with the next character, the cat meets Black.
Yes. Black, the Rikisha man's cat. A jinrikisha being one of those hand-pulled carts common back then.
And this meeting happens in the tea garden.
That's right. And Black is the complete opposite of the teacher's cat, at least initially. He's imposing, loud, declares himself the king of cats.
A feline ego clash.
Definitely. Black is immediately rude, dismissive of the teacher, calls him mere skin and bone. He boasts about his strength, what he eats. It's all very physical, very dominant.
It challenges that human-centric view of who's important, doesn't it?
It does. And their little argument about whether a teacher or a rikisha man is greater is just fantastic. Black is utterly convinced of his masters and therefore his own superiority.
based on?
Well, strength, maybe usefulness.
Yeah.
He catches rats, after all. Which brings us to the twist.
Ah, there's more to Black's story.
Yes. Later on, he sort of confides in the narrator. Turns out his master keeps the reward money the police pay for dead rats. Black does the work, the master gets the cash.
So the mighty king of cats is actually being exploited.
Pretty much. It adds this layer of social commentary, about labor and who benefits. And it makes our narrator think.
How so?
He decides to stop catching rats himself. Maybe it's a realization about the futility, or maybe it's him leaning more into his role as an observer, not a participant in that kind of, economy.
Fascinating. Moving away from instinct towards intellect, perhaps.
Something like that. And the teacher certainly provides plenty to observe. His diary entries are quite revealing.
What do we learn from those?
Well, there's envy. He's jealous of some guy with a geisha wife. There's also this flicker of self-awareness about his bad painting.
Oh, he admits it.
Briefly. But then he immediately dreams that the terrible painting is being admired. So vanity wins out.
Huh. Classic human contradiction. Aware of the flaw, but still craving praise for it.
Exactly. It's that internal struggle between knowing the truth and wanting approval anyway.
Enter Mr. Meiji again, the esthetician, the one who suggested the painting. He sounds like quite a character.
Oh, he is. He seems to just love playing tricks, telling these elaborate, probably untrue stories, like the one about Nicholas Nickleby advising Gibbon on his history book, or some confusing tale about Theophano.
What's the point of all that? Just to mess with people?
Partly, I think. But it also exposes how people react. Do they question it? Do they pretend to understand? It highlights social awkwardness and intellectual pretension.
And the teacher worries more about being caught not getting the joke rather than the lie itself.
Precisely. He doesn't want to look foolish. Mighty even calls him an indivisible man at one point, sarcastically.
Though even Mighty faces reality eventually, something about his health declining.
Yeah, there's a later mention that he's become crippled, using Black's condition as a comparison. It's a subtle reminder that even the tricksters aren't immune to life's hardships. Adds a touch of realism.
Okay, shifting gears to New Year's. A time for traditions and apparently greeting cards.
Right, and one card arrives with a picture of a cat on it.
The narrator.
You'd think. But the teacher, completely wrapped up in the news of the Russo-Japanese War, looks at it and says, "It's a bear."
A bear. Seriously.
Seriously, just completely oblivious to the cat living in his own house. It's comical, but also shows how preoccupied humans can be.
How does he finally figure it out?
The maid, Osan, adds a little note, a postscript, mentioning the cat. Then the teacher realizes and actually gives the cat a look.
Yeah.
Maybe even a bit of respect for being on a greeting card.
Recognition at last, even if prompted. It does show the cat's presence is growing, slowly.
Slowly, yes. Meanwhile, the teacher hates having visitors. He's described as oyster-like, very reclusive.
But someone does visit.
Yes, Mr. Kagetsu, another former student. And he arrives with a broken tooth.
Oh no, how?
His explanation involves mushrooms. It sounds completely ridiculous, frankly. Another example of these slightly absurd social interactions.
And Kengetsu actually notices the cat.
He does. Praises his size, which is a contrast to the teacher's usual indifference. Again, outsiders seem to see the cat more clearly.
Then they talk about a concert.
A little concert, yes. And the teacher gets oddly interested when female participants are mentioned. A little glimpse of perhaps some hidden desires behind his quiet exterior.
And there's a story about kamaboko. That's fish cake, right?
Right. Just another little anecdote. But then the cat secretly eats the leftover piece later.
Does he? Why is that significant?
He sees it as elevating his status. Like, I get to eat the fancy leftovers. It shows his sharp awareness of the little hierarchies and privileges within the house. He also observes the kids hoarding sugar, more commentary on human wit and egoism, even in children.
The New Year's meal itself causes problems too, doesn't it? The zoni soup?
Oh, yes. The master eats way too much zoni. That's the soup with the sticky mochi rice cakes in it, and gets terrible indigestion.
Leading to family drama.
A petty argument over who should get the Takati Estates, the indigestion medicine, for him. It's all very mundane, very real.
And how does the teacher cope?
Hilariously, he tries reading Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, presumably for mental fortitude.
Doesn't work.
Apparently not, because then he writes in his diary listing all the remedies he's tried. Fasting, avoiding pickles, massage, milk, breathing exercises, soba noodles.
Well, hold this.
And concludes that ultimately, Masamune's sake is the only thing that helps.
So much for stoicism.
Exactly. Then a friend suggests his illness is due to ancestral sins, and the teacher weakly counters by mentioning Carlyle. Just name-dropping, really.
Meanwhile, the cat has his own zony adventure.
He does. He sees the leftover soup and thinks, maybe I'll try that. Curiosity gets the better of him.
But it doesn't go well.
Not at all. The mochi, the rice cake, gets stuck to his teeth. Utterly stuck.
Oh dear. Panic.
Complete panic. And this leads to some funny but surprisingly deep thoughts from the cat, like, a rare chance often drives all creatures to act quite contrary to their will. He wanted this soup, but the opportunity led to this mess.
And he tries desperately to get it off.
Yes. He ends up standing on his hind legs, thrashing around. Another insight. Danger calls for unusual efforts. It's slapstick, but with these philosophical captions.
How does the family react?
Mostly with amusement or indifference, until the maid finally, reluctantly, helps him get the mochi unstuck.
Leaving the cat feeling.
Utterly humiliated. So humiliated, he decides he needs to go visit Miss Mikey.
The neighbor's cat. A potential love interest.
Well, the narrator certainly appreciates her beauty and the softer passions. She represents something gentler, more refined than his own chaotic household.
What's their interaction like?
It's quite sweet, actually. Polite New Year's greetings.
Yeah.
Miss Mikey has a little bell collar. They chat about her mistress's age and complicated family history involving someone named Ten Shoin. It's very proper.
Almost like a little Austen novel scene, but with cats.
Kind of. Until the music teacher calls Mikey inside for tiffin.
Ah!
But Mikey shows real concern for the narrator, asks if he's okay.
Does he tell her about the mochi incident?
No way. He's too embarrassed. Feline pride, you know.
Understandable, but then who shows up?
Black again. The Rikishi man's cat.
More trouble.
More amusing banter, anyway. Black calls him a ninny hammer, which the narrator doesn't understand. Then nincompoop. Just general insults.
And trouble for Black, too.
Yes. Mrs. Kurumaya, the Rikishi man's wife, comes out yelling about stolen salted salmon, and she suspects Black.
Is he guilty?
The narrator notices a muddy bone evidence right under Black's paws. But even caught red-pawed, Black is indignant when identified as Kurumaya's Black. He has his pride, too. Then Mrs. Kurumaya complains about needing beef, and Black boasts he'll get some, rudely dismissing the narrator again.
Never a dull moment with Black, then another visitor for the teacher.
Yes, a student named Tufu, dressed rather formally. He arrives with more tales of Mr. Mighty's antics.
Maite again? What now?
Apparently, Maite took Tufu to a foreign restaurant and tried to order a dish called tochimembo.
Which doesn't exist, right?
Exactly. The waiter is completely baffled. Maite then explains the ingredients are haiku-ka of the Nippon style. Just a jumble of poetic terms. Pure nonsense.
Just to make the waiter and maybe Tufu look silly.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Maite is triumphant about his successful joke. It really skewers that kind of intellectual showing off.
And Tufu has his own reason for visiting.
Yes, he wants the teacher to join a recitation society they formed, like a drama club, basically. They perform pieces. Tufu tries to explain some theatrical terms from a chikamatsu play they did, oiran, nakai, yorite, but clearly doesn't fully understand them himself.
Or pretension.
More enthusiasm than knowledge, maybe? He played a boatman in their first performance, but it was apparently a disaster because some blue stockings intellectual women nearby just laughed at him.
Oh, poor Tu.
He's crestfallen but already planning the next meeting and wants the teacher's support, his signature.
Bless his heart. And then a letter from Maite.
Yes, and it's dripping with sarcasm. Starts unusually formally, then claims he's incredibly busy with endless New Year's events parties, banquets, literary gatherings.
Likely exaggerated.
Almost certainly. He mentions trying to treat Tufu to Tuchimembo again, and failing that, promises peacock tongues instead.
Peacock tongues? Is that even a thing?
He includes this elaborate, likely fabricated history of Romans and Europeans eating them. It's pure might I BS.
And he ties it back to the teacher.
Oh, yes. He expresses mock concern that his busy social life might give him indigestion, just like the teacher, then gives sarcastic advice on managing it, supposedly based on ancient Roman practices.
Just constantly poking fun.
Always. The teacher reads it and knows he's been nibbled at the bait yet again.
Okay, time passes. The seasons change. What happens next?
The daffodil in the garden withers. The plum tree blooms. Life goes on, but the cat tries to visit Miss Maite and can't find her.
Oh no, why not?
He overhears the music teacher talking to her maid. Miss Maite is sick.
Sick.
Lack of appetite, being kept warm. I don't treat cats. She'll probably get better on her own.
Not very helpful.
No. They discuss her symptoms, hard breathing, cough. They worry about influenza, consumption, even pestilence.
And do they know the cause?
The maid blames a dirty male cat owned by a rude teacher, meaning our narrator.
What? She blames him.
Yes. Describes the teacher's gargling habits in detail quite rudely and says she wishes she could give the narrator cat to the teacher and beat him.
That's harsh.
Very. The cat hears all this and understandably retreats home.
Just after that, Maite shows up again, despite the letter saying how busy he was.
Of course. Right on cue. He immediately starts teasing the teacher about writing Shintaishi and demands to see it.
Does the teacher have anything?
Reluctantly, he admits he translated a simple piece of prose from a children's reader about gravity.
Giant gravitation.
That's the one. Maite jokingly suspects it's revenge for the peacock tongue story. Compares it to appreciating a debt collector's note as fine writing.
Always finding an angle.
But when the teacher reads the simple piece, Maite feigns defeat, complimenting his unexpected cleverness in choosing something so mundane.
Then Kangetsu arrives, the one with the broken tooth.
Yes. And Maite vaguely tells him the teacher has routed the ghost of Tochimembo with a masterpiece. More teasing.
Do they talk about Tufu?
The teacher mentions Tufu's recent visit, and his odd preference for being called Oki-Tufu instead of Ochikochi. Maite finds this hilarious. The teacher also recounts Tufu's disastrous boatman performance.
Does Maite know about the Recitation Society?
He claims he was just about to mention it. Says their next performance is very up-to-date. The Kanjiki Yasha, a popular melodrama, and guess who's playing the heroine? Omiya.
Let me guess. Tufu.
Tufu. Kangetsu finds this highly amusing.
The teacher tries to defend Tufu's honesty, maybe taking a jab at Maite.
He does, referencing past trickery. Maite plays it cool, uses some slang, Gyotoku no Manaita, implying Tufu is foolish.
Does the teacher understand the slang?
He pretends to, but Kangetsu bluntly asks what it means, flustering the teacher who tries to change the subject to a daffodil.
Smooth. Then the conversation shifts again. Becomes more serious.
Unexpectedly, yes. Maite shares a singular experience from the end of the previous year. Waiting for Tufu, reading a letter from his mother about war casualties and her own mortality, feeling ashamed of his idleness, walking near a known suicide spot and having a fleeting suicidal thought himself.
Wow, that's quite a shift from his usual persona.
It is. And Kangetsu shares something similar. Attending a year-end party, hearing a woman he knew, Miss B, was ill and delirious, calling his name. Feeling uneasy, heading home, feeling called back, only to find he dropped his violin case.
Strange, unsettling experiences for both of them.
Miney tries to lighten it by referencing Professor William James in the subconscious, but it hangs in the air. The teacher just eats sweets, silently.
Does the teacher share anything?
He does, but it's more domestic drama. Wanting to go to a Guido puppet show, arguing with his wife about which one, then suddenly feeling ill, chills, dizziness, just as they were about to leave.
Convenient timing. Or real.
Hard to say. He tries to explain his mortality to his wife using an English proverb she misunderstands. Doctor comes, finds nothing serious. Wife insists on medicine, he feels nauseous, and recovers just as the showtime passes.
So he missed the show anyway.
Yep. Lady sarcastically comments on what a devoted husband he is. The cat, listening to all this, just thinks about how idle and hypocritical they all are.
He's had enough of their talk.
Exactly. He slips away to check on Miss Maike.
And?
The garden seems lively, but she's not there. He curls up on a cushion on the veranda and falls asleep.
Only to be woken up.
By voices inside. It's the music teacher talking to a bushia, someone who makes Buddhist altar items.
About what?
About a beautiful, newly made golden ihai memorial tablet for Maike, with her posthumous Buddhist name inscribed.
Oh no! So Miss Maike.
She died. The teacher places the tablet on the altar, burns incense. She and the maid say prayers. The cat is just shocked. He realizes his friend is gone.
How do the humans talk about her?
They lament her early death, but then they immediately contrast her with the narrator, calling him an ugly, mischievous beast.
That's awful.
The maid even says she wishes he had died instead. She keeps calling him Nora, stray cat, which really offends him. They talk about how such a sinful beast won't be saved.
That's incredibly cruel, especially when he's grieving.
It is. He thinks about his own near-death experience stuck in that pot and how terrifying it was. He can't bear their words. He just leaves the veranda, shakes himself off, and decides never to go back to that house again.
A final sad break. How does this leave him feeling overall?
Pretty weary of the world, actually. He becomes even lazier, more reclusive, kind of mirroring the teacher in a way.
Still nameless.
Still nameless. He remembers threats of being kicked out, but feels a grudging gratitude that the master let him stay, despite the maid's constant ill treatment.
Is there any hope at the end of these excerpts?
Just a tiny whimsical flicker. He muses that maybe someday a great sculptor like Hidari Jingoro might carve his likeness. A small dream of being seen, perhaps remembered.
What a journey. So summing up this deep dive into I Am a Cat, what are the big takeaways?
Well, you get this incredibly sharp, witty narrator. The cat's observations are funny, yes, but also deeply critical of human behavior, the silliness of social norms, artistic pretensions.
And there's real sadness, too, with Miss Mike A. It covers a lot of ground.
It really does. Those aha moments come from seeing familiar human flaws, vanity, hypocrisy, laziness, envy, reflected through this completely unique non-human lens. It makes them seem both absurd and deeply recognizable.
And surprisingly relevant, even though it's set over a century ago in Japan.
Absolutely. The core observations about people haven't changed that much.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Think about the characters we met. The dabbling teacher, the boastful black, the tricky mighty, the earnest tufu. Which of their quirks or vanities seem most familiar in the world today?
And maybe, just maybe, if you have a pet, what truths might they be silently observing about your life? What would your cat or dog say?
Something to definitely ponder. If you enjoyed this glimpse, Soseki's full novel offers so much more of the cat's unique perspective.
Highly recommend it.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.